Hi everyone, this is Dr. Nitin Chhoda and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. Folks, you have heard me talk about this before. The entire stimulus situation is like a chess game. Here's the chessboard on your screen. The players right now are President Biden, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and the bane of his existence, the Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. So what is happening right now is Chuck Schumer gave a press conference today, and then he featured Reverend Raphael Warnock from Georgia and John Ossoff from Georgia, who essentially highlighted their support, the importance of the massive $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. The thing I'm noticing as far as the Democrats are concerned is that they seem to be highly coordinated, they seem to be cohesive in their approach, and they're trying to create strong support for this plan in the court of public opinion, as well as put pressure on the Republicans through a business coalition that President Biden is building, through appearances by Vice President Kamala Harris on regional television networks in places like West Virginia, where we have the conservative Democrat Joe Manchin from West Virginia. And it seems like all their strategies are working. And then they have their plan B, which is using budget reconciliation if they're not able to get bipartisan support. As a part of this cohesive strategy, House Speaker Pelosi spoke today. She had a press briefing. By the way, she was asked multiple questions on impeachment, and she said she didn't want to comment on it. She wanted to let the House managers do their job. And she basically said, hey, we don't want static from the rest of us. So she refused to answer any questions about the impeachment. She did say she would chime in next week, so we'll see what she says. But let's focus now on what House Speaker Pelosi said. There were three major takeaways from what House Speaker Pelosi said, and one of them is some really good news about the $1.9 trillion stimulus package. Let's just jump into all those segments. Thank you so much for watching. If you learned something new from this video, please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications. That really helps out the YouTube algorithm. So let's start with Speaker Pelosi saying the American Rescue Plan is necessary. And she said she actually talked about support from the Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, who said that inflation was not a concern and who said that the true unemployment rate is greater than the projected 6.3% from the US Department of Labor, and it's actually closer to 10% if we take into consideration that the labor force participation rate has decreased, which means that many individuals have dropped out of the workforce. Let's hear from Speaker Pelosi today. Let's roll the tape.
The American Rescue Plan put forth by President Biden as a part of how we meet the needs of the American people. The pandemic and the economic crisis that go with it continues to be devastating to the American people. This legislation is necessary, but don't take my word for it. Yesterday, the chairman of the Federal Reserve stated that the real unemployment rate is 10%, matching the worst point in the Great Recession. In his speech, he said for recovery, fiscal policy is an essential tool for this situation. He referenced that monetary policy would not be enough. Chairman Powell played down the fears of inflation during the pandemic and noted that, in his words, inflation has been much lower and more stable over the past 3 decades than in earlier times, and that he did not expect it to accelerate in a sustained way coming out of the pandemic. As Chairman Powell said, given the number of people who have lost their jobs, the likelihood that some will struggle to find work in the pandemic economy, in the post-pandemic economy, achieving and sustaining maximum employment will require more than supportive monetary policy. It will require a society-wide commitment.
Now, folks, the next segment is extremely important, and this is good news. Speaker Pelosi talked about different committees working on this bill and the fact that the bill would make its way through different committees. And by the way, that process is going on right now. They actually worked till 4 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday. But she said something that was very important. She said this will certainly be on the president's desk to sign before the March 14th deadline. So, folks, this is very encouraging. This is the first time that this has been said publicly, that this needs to be done before the March 14th deadline by House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the top Democrat in the House. Let's roll the tape and hear what she had to say about this important timeline, which has consequences for millions of our fellow Americans. Let's roll the tape and hear what she had to say.
The legislation that our members are working on this week, we hope to finish our markups in committee this week and then send it to the Budget Committee next week for them to work their will on it, then to the Rules Committee, and then to the floor, and we hope to have this all done by the end of February. Certainly on the President's desk in time to offset the March 14th deadline where some unemployment benefits will expire.
Now, in the next segment, let's understand some of the priorities that Speaker Pelosi outlines. She says childcare is a priority, getting children back to school is a priority, help for women is a priority, specifically African American women. And it is true that women have been disproportionately impacted more as a result of this pandemic and have dropped out of the labor force participation rate more than men. That is an actual fact. So let's hear House Speaker Pelosi talk about the priorities as far as childcare, getting kids back to school, and helping women, including minority women. Let's roll the tape and hear from her.
I'm particularly interested in how women are affected by the pandemic, but also by this legislation. Over 2.3 million women have been forced to leave the workforce entirely, including 1 million moms. That's why this bill is so important, because it has a strong commitment to child care so that parents, moms and dads, are able to go to work. It has a strong commitment to getting our kids back to school, another path to the workforce for moms. Last month, January, nearly 80% of workers who left the workforce were women, and in December, it was 90% of those who had left the workforce were women. The women's labor force participation rate is now just about 57%, the lowest level in 33 years. For women of color, the situation is even worse. Again, that is about the livelihood of the American people, about the lives of the American people. I talked about 10% unemployment, as quoted by the chairman of the Fed, Chairman Powell. Another number that is just so sobering is 470,000 Americans have died of the coronavirus. 470,000. Again, this legislation that we're passing now so addresses the needs of the American people when it comes to the coronavirus. It's about the lives and the livelihood of the American people.
Now, in the next segment, House Speaker Pelosi gives us an idea of how hard the committees are working. She says 9 committees are working on this plan right now. She said that they work till 4 o'clock in the morning this week. So there's a lot of work going on, and Speaker Pelosi highlighted that. She also said that the push to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour is still ongoing. I believe that that's going to end up on the chopping block, because the conservative Democrat from West Virginia, Joe Manchin, there he is, hello, Senator Manchin, has basically said he's not in support of it, and has said that $11 an hour minimum wage makes more sense for his constituents in West Virginia. So I do believe that that's going to end up on the chopping block. But in a very interesting strategy, both House Speaker Pelosi and the Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer seem to continue pushing for the $15 an hour. Let's roll the tape and hear from Speaker Pelosi.
We're proud again of our committee chairs who are moving ahead expeditiously with 9 committees working on marking up legislation for the American Rescue Plan this week. They're moving forward to crush the virus. The funding there for virus production, distribution, for testing, etc., for other funding in terms of access to health care. Again, the goal is to put vaccines in people's arms, children back in school, workers back in their jobs, and money in people's pockets. And the money in people's pockets, we're very proud that in the legislation, we in the House, the Education and Labor Committee marked up its bill on Tuesday until 4 a.m. Wednesday morning. Big part of money in people's pockets in the Education and Labor Committee, in addition to making our schools safe for our children to go back to school. In the bill, it gradually raises the minimum wage to $15 an hour, increases paychecks. In doing so, increases paychecks for 27 million workers. and pulling nearly 1 million people out of poverty. Well over 50%, closer to 2/3 or 70% of people making the minimum wage are women. Many of them women of color.
And folks, in the final segment, and this is also very important, Speaker Pelosi emphasizes once again that the entire bill must be done and must get to the president's desk before the unemployment benefits deadline of March 14th rolls around. Again, this is very encouraging. This is a big positive sign. And Speaker Pelosi also says that the child tax credit, which has been alluded to by Reverend Raphael Warnock and by John Ossoff in another press briefing that I did release on our channel earlier today. She said the child tax credit will help children get out of poverty. Let's roll the tape and hear what Speaker Pelosi had to say about this.
Again, it secures the child tax credits, helping nearly 1 in 3 adults having trouble paying for household expenses and 12 million children from going hungry. So in the legislation, we have the child tax credit. This is quite remarkable, $3,000 for a child, and then they're 6 years and under, it is $3,600. This is pulling these children out of poverty. The bill also addresses those who are food insecure, rent insecure, and the rest. So it's a very important piece of legislation. It is what this country needs, and I salute not only the president and vice president for their leadership in recognizing that in this important work, but also to do so in a way that is robust, meets the needs of the American people, but also meets the needs of the strength of our economy. We plan, as I said, to work on it this week, next week, and have it passed by the end of February, and so we can send it to the president's desk before the unemployment benefits expire.
That's it, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you thought. If you learned something new, please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications. That would really mean a lot to me. That helps out the YouTube algorithm. Let me know what you thought of Speaker Pelosi's comments about the child tax credit, about helping children get back to school, about childcare, about helping women, about helping poor families, and also about trying to get all of this done through the 9 committees that are working in many cases through the night, getting all of this done and getting it to the desk of the President of the United States, because once the President signs it, it becomes law. And then the US Treasury, led by Janet Yellen, then instructs the IRS to start sending out the money. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think. And again, please click like, please subscribe, please enable notifications. I would really appreciate that. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.